All right, 9:07 now on Tuesday morning. This is Phil Anderson, Facebook Live 13 News here. And I'm standing here just to the east of Southeast 28th and California Avenue, where you see a lot of crime scene tape here at this scene. And there was a tragic incident that occurred here in this area. Police investigating now the death of a 5-year-old girl who was found around 6 p.m. by police over at the Dillon's gas station here just behind me. Topeka Fire Department crews were trying to provide some first aid for the young girl about 6 o'clock on Monday evening, and the girl was taken to the hospital where she later died.
Thanks, Doug. Some breaking news now on the murder of a young girl. Topeka police have now identified the victim as 5-year-old Zoey Felix. Expect updates on WIBW.com throughout the afternoon and in our evening newscast.
One man is in custody tonight as law enforcement investigates the death of a child. 25-year-old Michael Cherry is in the Shawnee County Jail being held for rape and first-degree murder in the death of 5-year-old Zoey Felix. Cherry's bond is $2 million. Topeka police were called to a disturbance around 6 last night at a gas station at Southeast 29th in California. First responders found Zoey and began life-saving measures, but she was later pronounced dead at the hospital. Authorities had this large crime scene taped off in a grassy field just north of the Dillon store there throughout the day. Cherry was booked just after 4 this morning. Jail officials list his address as homeless. TPD, though, said he and the child knew each other. Zoey's neighbors are heartbroken to learn what happened to her. 13's Callie Holthouse is live in Southeast Topeka for us tonight. Callie?
Yeah, I'm here. Just behind me you can see one of the crime scenes where this occurred and a small memorial that's been put together in honor of Zoey Felix. Earlier today I spoke to the neighbors who lived just across the street from the house Zoey stayed at with her mother. They're devastated to learn that despite their repeated pleas for help, Zoey still suffered this tragic fate. Neighbors of Zoey Felix say they loved the 5-year-old like she was one of their own.
Loving girl, questions. Loved the children. All the kids played with her. They all looked out for her. Everybody looked out for Zoey.
She was a curious George.
She was a curious George with nowhere to go. Nowhere to go.
But despite their efforts, they say she lived a life of instability. The house she stayed in lacked utilities, and she was sometimes left home alone.
No lights, no water. By herself sometimes.
Neighbors say they did what they could for Zoey, helping keep her bathed, clothed, and fed, even going so far as to report Felix's living conditions to local authorities. Police Chief Brian Wheelis would not confirm whether authorities had any contact with the family. He also would not comment on their relationship.
The information and all the investigative evidence will be compiled and sent to the district attorney's office.
Neighbors say they are left devastated.
It hurts. It's a tragedy. You have a death and then you have a tragedy. Hers is a tragedy. And I just experienced a tragedy. That's a tragedy. It's more than just a death. It's a tragedy.
13 News did submit a request, a Kansas Open Records Act request to the Department of Children and Families to see what, if any, investigations took place regarding Zoey Felix. A DCF spokesperson would only tell us that Topeka police notified them of Zoey's death and their thoughts are with those who loved and supported her. Back to you in the studio.
And of course, we will stay on top of the story as well and let you know as well more tonight at 10 about a candlelight vigil that is being planned for Zoey Felix tomorrow here in Topeka. Evening on this Wednesday. Once again, I'm David Oliver.
And I'm Melissa Bruner. Thanks for being along with us. Prosecutors say there is no timeline as to when charges might be filed in the rape and murder of a little girl. We start with that update tonight at 6. Flowers, candles, and a cross mark the edge of a field near Southeast 28th in California today. Topeka police had been investigating that area all day yesterday following the death of 5-year-old Zoey Felix. She died Monday night. 25-year-old Michael Cherry remains jailed today on charges of rape rape and first-degree murder. Topeka police told us they have identified everyone involved, but do not know when they'll finish their investigation and reports. Shawnee County DA Mike Kagay told 13 News today that once his office receives those reports, he will review them and decide on charges. Under Kansas law, killing during commission of a rape or killing a child during a kidnapping with the intent to commit a sex offense, both are qualifying factors for a capital crime. That could mean a life sentence or death penalty. We will keep you posted on that process. A lot of you have been asking why the Department for Children and Families didn't do something to help Zoey. DCF leaders faced questions about it today. 13's Callie Holthouse is here with their response.
Melissa, today I sat in on the Joint Committee on Child Welfare System Oversight, where leaders of different child welfare groups came together and DCF was under the spotlight. In the past 2 years alone, Topeka police have responded to 23 calls at the house where Zoey Felix sometimes stayed with her mother, Holly Felix, including a September 5th welfare check alleging a child was living at the address without electricity. TPD confirmed the house was without power, but learned the child was not staying there. The incident was reported to DCF.
So I actually do not have the legal ability to say anything in a public setting until certain additional things happen related to making a finding of abuse or neglect. I know it sounds technical, but it's the law, and it's really about protecting children and families.
Records show that on June 15th, Holly Felix was put on an 18-month probation for aggravated battery, for which she received a felony conviction and DUI. Her probationary period started in mid-June, a condition of which prohibits Holly from contacting her daughter Zoey. It's unclear if that condition was upheld. Despite public outcry at conditions in which Zoey Felix was living and the lack of action to improve them, DCF maintains its confidence in the services it provides.
We have to have those robust services at the community level and across all of our systems to meet those needs.
Senator Molly Baumgardner pressed Laura Howard, the Secretary for Children and Families, for answers in a meeting Wednesday morning.
Could you help explain why it is that you are not going to comment about the 5-year-old girl publicly today? And the circumstances around her rape and murder.
While one court document shows there's no contact order, Shawnee County Corrections Director Brian Cole told us that is a standard form, and since DCF did not remove Zoey from the home and there was no order ending parental rights, probation supervision went forward knowing she would continue providing care.
More questions to be answered tonight. Thanks for that part of our coverage. A Topeka church, meanwhile, is hosting a community prayer vigil right now in response to the rape and murder of 5-year-old Zoey Felix. 13's Alex Carter is live in downtown at Topeka's First Presbyterian Church tonight. Alex?
David and Melissa, Sarah Stogsdill Brown, the church's lead pastor, says she arranged tonight's vigil after a church member came to her in distress following the murder of Zoey Felix. First Presbyterian is also holding the vigil tonight to show support for survivors and victims of sexual assault who will relive their traumas in the coming days. Tonight's service included several readings of scripture from different pastors across Topeka churches, moments of silence, and the lighting of prayer candles. There were about 75 people inside of the church that were there to pay their respects to the victim, Zoey Felix. We'll have more tonight on the vigil tonight at 13 News at 10. For now, I'll send it back to you guys in the studio.
Jeremy, thanks so much. Now to our news at 10. The man arrested this week in the rape and killing of a 5-year-old Topeka girl is now formally charged tonight with capital murder. 13's Victoria Cassell spoke with the district attorney today about the charges and how they were filed. She has the update tonight. Victoria.
David, at 3:30 this afternoon, Shawnee County District Attorney Mike Kagay held a news conference explaining the charges against 25-year-old Michael Cherry.
Because it qualifies. It seemed appropriate, given the circumstances, given the facts of this case.
24-year-old Michael Cherry has been charged with capital murder, rape of a child under 14, and an alternate count of first-degree murder in the commission of a felony. The charges come on the heels of the discovery of 5-year-old Zoey Felix's body at the Dillon's gas station near Southeast 29th Street in California. Kagay says Cherry's crime met the capital standard under state law, killing Zoey Felix with premeditation and during the commission of rape.
The capital murder charge allows us to file what's called a death notice. And we would do that again if we were going to seek the death penalty after the conclusion of the preliminary hearing.
Kage says the charging of a capital offense does open the possibility for the death penalty or a life sentence without parole.
Depending on how the evidence comes out, depending on how the evidence is presented and which way the jury wants to take it, ultimately that's a question for them to decide. I think the investigation into the murder and rape of this 5-year-old girl is fairly complete. TPD did an excellent job of allocating, I would say, every possible resource into making sure this investigation was done thoroughly and quickly, and I appreciate their efforts there.
Cherry remains held at the Shawnee County Jail on a $2 million bond. A scheduling conference has been scheduled for October 12th, and Cherry's appointed attorney has mentioned to withdraw so a qualified attorney from the death penalty defense unit can take his place. David.
Victoria.
The murder of Zoey Felix. 13 News late today obtained the police incident report through an open records request. The first page of the offense report is public record. Zoey's name is redacted, but it lists the offense as capital murder and the type of force or weapon as personal. An accompanying narrative provided through our request states the initial 911 call came in at 5:55 Monday night, reporting a 5-year-old unresponsive next to the gas pumps at the Southeast 29th and California Dillons. An EMT arrived on the scene 1 minute and 44 seconds later and started CPR 2 minutes 21 seconds after arriving. At 6:21, ambulance crews requested Topeka police come to the hospital because of suspected abuse. And at 6:39, Zoey was pronounced dead. While the narrative redacts several entries, it does show that by 6:56 Monday night, officers had moved their investigation to the north end of Dillons. That is the field that was taped off with crime scene tape until after 4:30 Tuesday afternoon, with tents and other items seen in the trees. The narrative identifies Zoey's father as being present, but blocks out her name as well as the names of 2 others at the scene, a 19-year-old woman and 25-year-old man. 25-year-old Michael Cherry is the man who was arrested that night and is now charged with capital murder in commission of a rape. He remains jailed on a $2 million bond. Downtown Topeka will be the site of a peaceful protest this weekend in response to Zoey's death. Organizers are calling on Governor Kelly to have a special session to address what they say were failures in the system. The march begins 5 o'clock tomorrow at Evergy Plaza. 13 News will bring you coverage of the event.
The Secretary of the Kansas Department of Children and Families answered our questions about what unfolded. 13's Lane Gillespie sat down with her. Lane, what did she say?
David, DCF Secretary Laura Howard says the agency made the correct responses to Felix's situations under the current policies. But she added they will look at those policies and see if changes are needed to make sure a case like 5-year-old Zoey Felix does not happen again. A Kansas Department of Children and Families summary report confirms 9 incidents involving 5-year-old Zoey Felix until her death on October 2nd.
You know, I really share the community's grief about the loss of Zoey, you know, and frankly share the anger that the community has.
Incidents such as her mother's DUI arrest while Felix was unrestrained in the front seat, or reports her home had no utilities but Zoey remained in the home. Neighbors and Republican legislative leaders call it a failure to protect Felix. DCF Secretary Laura Howard says her team took the steps they could.
In this circumstance, I'm thinking about the report that we received in May. You know, made some allegations of no utilities, lack of food, potential drug use. Our workers went to the home. None of those things were true at that point in time. The child was safe. The child was healthy.
But she also says the DCF could make some changes.
We are going to continue to look at policy and say what might be different in the future. And as we look at that, as we consider that, we'll certainly make known any changes that we decide to make.
Part of those changes include communicating with law enforcement about both of their investigations. Topeka police were called to check Zoey's welfare in September.
We both certainly had occurrences of contact with this child and family, so we're going to be having some dialogue about whether we need to change some things with regard to that communication.
Republican Senate and House leaders released a statement Tuesday calling for the state to create an independent child welfare agency. Howard says she does not disagree and believes it could help support vulnerable families.
I was heartened that they were really wanting to come to the table in terms of putting the Office of Child Advocate into statute. The governor's been pushing for that for the last couple of years since she created it herself. So I really look forward to working with them, and I also hope to work really closely on some of the other facets of that package in terms of how we can better support vulnerable families in the state.
Howard also mentioned the DCF goes through tens of thousands of abuse or neglect cases. They want everybody who suspects a child is being neglected or abused to contact the Kansas Protection Report Center at that number, 1-800-922-5330. Melissa?
All right, Lane, thank you. Shawnee.
The March for Zoey took place at the Kansas State House yesterday. Hundreds turned out to the demonstration, hoping to inspire positive change in Kansas's child welfare systems. 13's Callie Holthouse has the details.
Zoey matters! Zoey matters!
Hundreds of people turned out for Saturday's March for Zoey. Those who attended say they hope it will inspire change in both Kansas's child welfare systems,
lasting change, accountability,
but also in the hearts of community members. Monica Felix attended Saturday's demonstration. Though she shares Zoey's last name, the two aren't related, but that doesn't stop her from caring as if they were.
We just need to do what we can, whether it's show up here or, write your elected officials or go and vote.
The march started at Evergy Plaza. Demonstrators held signs and chanted as they marched through downtown on their way to the Kansas State Capitol. On the steps of the State House, they gathered to share a moment of silence for 5-year-old Zoey Felix, who was raped and murdered in Topeka this week. Participants say they were deeply pained to learn of Zoey's case.
I feel so much pain, I feel like she's my daughter, even though she's not. But we're just so sad what happened to her. She don't deserve to die this way, She deserves to be protected.
Rodriguez says she hopes to be Zoey's voice, demanding justice for the slain child. 25-year-old Michael Cherry was arrested and faces charges of capital murder in the commission of rape, murder in the first degree, and rape. But those at the march say Cherry isn't the only one who needs to be held accountable for Zoey's death. They criticized organizations like the Department for Children and Families for not intervening on Zoey's behalf.
One thing that we definitely shouldn't fail is our kids, the children of the world. If they can't look up to us or have trust in us, who can they trust? Who can they go to? We want to know that our justice system is working and that we can trust in them to do the things that they're supposed to do.
In Topeka, Callie Holthouse, 13 News.
And the demonstrators at the march say they hope that it isn't the end of their fight for justice and reform. Cherry remains in custody on a $2 million bond. He is scheduled to appear in court this upcoming Thursday.
It has been a tough couple weeks in Topeka. 3 homicides, the victims ages 18, 17, and of course 5-year-old Zoey Felix. Many of you are asking questions. We are too. Shawnee County District Attorney Mike Kege is here to answer a few of those. Welcome, District Attorney Kege. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I'd like you to clear up a couple things. First of all, regarding the Zoey Felix case and some questions people have had in regards to the suspect, Michael Cherry. Some people are saying that there was a prior case involving him and your office either dismissed charges or elected not to file charges. Did you have any prior contact with Michael Cherry before last week?
Before last week, I did not know who Michael Cherry was. I'd never heard of him before, and we certainly had no police reports.
And I will say that we did check with the Shawnee County Jail. They have no record of Mr. Cherry being arrested prior to last week either. So there is that. A lot of questions surrounding who should have been looking out for Zoey. Neighbors tell us they reported many times to DCF, Child Protective Services, that they were concerned about Zoey's welfare. We've made open records requests to DCF. What about your office? Did you have any cases forwarded regarding Zoey? And first of all, did you have any cases regarding Zoey?
Well, first of all, Melissa, I appreciate the question, and I'm not trying to dance around it. We don't name minor victims. The law provides a lot of protection for minor victims. So I know it seems like a silly answer given that you're giving me a specific name, but I can't really answer your question without violating that victim's privacy.
In more general terms, what has to happen for your office to get involved in a child's welfare?
So what we're looking at is a referral from a law enforcement agency or from the Department of Children and Families, DCF. And that's how this works. So theoretically, a law enforcement officer coming across a scene could identify a child who's in need of care because they are in an abusive or neglectful situation, they can place that child in police protective custody, and that initiates what's called a sync proceeding in our office, a child need of care proceeding, where we file paperwork with the court, we place that child in state custody, and the case moves forward. More frequently, though, those come from referral from the Department of Children and Families. DCF will get a call. They'll go out and do an investigation, and they will refer that investigation to my office and say, we would like you to initiate a sync proceeding in the case of this particular child. I can confirm the child we're talking about, that never happened.
Does simply having a child live in a tent or in a homeless encampment, does that rise to the level of a need to remove the child from that situation, or what kind of interventions are there?
Right, so without commenting specifically on the facts of this case, I can tell you that generally speaking, if the child is in danger, right, if the child is not being cared for in the way that a reasonable person would provide care for the child, there's a concern. If the child has been abused or is at risk of abuse in any way, there is a concern, and that concern should certainly be explored. And it would be my expectation that law enforcement or DCF would do that and forward those reports to my office so we could take appropriate action.
We've also filed requests for the arresting affidavits in this case. Will that be released?
That is a judgment call for the court. So,
are you objecting to it?
I'm not sure if I can comment on something that is a pending motion.
Okay.
So what I'll do is I'll wait for the court to make their ruling.
Fair enough.
And then we'll go from there.
Fair enough. And even if there is information released, we understand that both parties have the right to redact some of the information, withhold some of it.
That's correct.
Because of the case. This is 28 homicides this year in Topeka. Of those, there are 8 victims under the age of 18, 1 victim who was 18, the most recent young man who was killed last night. How tough is that for your office?
It's heartbreaking, Melissa. It's all these cases are difficult. Anytime somebody loses their life, it's difficult. It's hard. When it's someone who's more vulnerable, it makes it that much harder. And not just in a homicide case, but anytime somebody in that position is harmed. We have a lot of Jessica's Law offenses, unfortunately, in this community where a child under the age of 14 has been sexually abused, has been raped. These cases will break your heart, and there's a real human cost to handling this kind of case and doing the work that we do. And we know that going in, but it's definitely challenging. I'm honored to do the work. I'm proud that this is the role that I play in it, but it really does take a toll on me, on my staff, on law enforcement, on judges. I've seen juries look at images and weep openly during a trial. Defense attorneys, they don't want to look at these things any more than we do. So there's a real human cost to doing the work we do.
Well, you're parents, and if you have children around the age of 5, I'm sure this has been a tough couple of weeks for you. Physically, labor-wise, when you have 28 homicide cases crossing your desk, just on the amount of work, how is your staff doing? Are you able to keep up? How does this compound on what already had been a backlog you were catching up on?
Yeah, it puts a strain on our resources. It puts a strain on our manpower. We're currently not fully staffed. We're trying to hire another attorney position. Our commissioners in Shawnee County have been very supportive of the work that we do, and I have no reason to believe that will not continue. So I know that if I need additional help, I can go to them and they'll be there.
Well, we appreciate you visiting with us and offering some perspective on these cases and the role of your office and in what are some very challenging situations. So thank you.
Thanks for having me, Melissa.
And for you and your staff and what you are doing.
Judge today ordered documents in the court case involving Zoey Felix's death to be sealed. 13 News filed an open records request for affidavits leading to the arrest of Michael Cherry. The judge ruled releasing the documents could compromise safety of those involved. So more on that coming up as well on our news at 6 tonight. We're going to shift 6 tonight. The Department for Children and Families released a document today summarizing its cases involving 5-year-old Zoey Felix following an open records request by 13 News. Our Callie Holthouse is in the newsroom tonight with more on what the report details.
David, DCF's child death case summary details 9 reports made to DCF involving Zoey Felix, 6 of which were investigated further. The other 3 were considered duplicative or combined with another open case. The summary lists a range of reports dating back to over a year before Zoey's death, largely pertaining to her living conditions. One of those reports covers a November 2022 arrest of Zoey's mother, Holly Felix, for driving under the influence as Zoey sat unrestrained in the front seat. DCF says it offered support to the family on multiple occasions, on each of which they were declined, but did not poise itself to intervene further than investigating the reports. The most recent case saw DCF trying to contact the family multiple times. Those included 5 visits to their home, a letter, and a phone call to a number found to be disconnected a week after their last attempted visit, on September 25th. Zoey died. The summary's final entry notes DCF's investigation into her death, stating the agency has substantiated a claim of sexual abuse and is still investigating the physical abuse leading to her demise. Michael Cherry, 25, is charged with capital murder and rape in connection with her death. Also provided in the summary is a statement from DCF Secretary Laura Howard, iterating the agency will take every step necessary to revise its policies and prevent anything similar from happening again.
Topeka police say a written report about Zoey Felix's living conditions was not fully forwarded to the Department for Children and Families as originally stated. We previously told you that Topeka police officers visited the home September 5th on reports there was no electricity. TPD said the mother told them Zoey was not living there, but they saw the child and she appeared fine. TPD told us at the time they later filed a report with DCF about it. Today, they told us the report itself was not sent. However, TPD says they did still notify DCF via phone call. The police department called the mistake a human error that will be prevented with additional checks and oversights in its records unit going forward. We do note that DCF did send agents to make contact with the Felix family several times in September following an August 29th report to their agency. It included 5 physical visits to the home, a phone call, and a letter sent by mail. The investigators never saw Zoey or spoke with the family.
Tonight, no cameras in the courtroom. That's the ruling of a Shawnee County judge today in the case of 25-year-old Michael Cherry, the man accused in the murder of Zoey Felix. 13's Callie Holthouse is in our newsroom tonight with more on what happened in the courtroom.
Yeah, David, in this morning's motion hearing, Cherry's defense asked that either cameras be barred or Cherry be allowed to appear in civilian clothing unrestrained. Judge Jessica Heinen made the decision to exclude cameras during a motions hearing this morning. Cherry's defense argues the case's high profile makes it crucial to maintain his image as a free and innocent man unless proven guilty. Cherry is accused of raping and murdering 5-year-old Zoey Felix in a homeless camp in early October. He faces the death penalty if convicted. In the courtroom was Zoey's mother, Holly Felix, as well as a neighbor who says she cared for Zoey in the weeks leading up to her death. A status conference is set for March 8, 2024 at 9 a.m.